Hi everybody, thank you so much for tuning into my channel. My name is Leanne, and as you can see, I'm back here with my compost. I'm working on turning it. I try to turn it a couple of times a month, but sometimes I only get it to once a month. If you are looking for a friend to learn how to garden with, I'm your girl. I am totally learning as I go and bringing you guys along with me through my YouTube channel. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you enjoy learning about composting with me. I got my compost turned. It was all in that stall. Now it's all in this one with some bonus leaves in there. It was a workout. I'm gonna finish this video up inside because it's kind of wet and gross out today. And I'll talk to you about what's in my compost pile. And I won't forget these eggs on my table. We'll talk about what's in my compost pile and how long each thing is supposed to take to decompose according to Google and various other resources. I'll share them all in the description below. What I have in my compost is a bunch of different stuff. I have pine needles because we have a couple of really big pine trees in our backyard and they just fall over the place. So they either fall directly into the compost pile or I rake them up when we're doing yard work and they get incorporated into the compost that way. Don't mind my messy sink. I'm trying to time it so where the boys sleep at the same time when Jack takes his nap. Jack's down to one nap and Jesse takes like scattered naps throughout the day, but I try to time it so that they're both sleeping for a little bit of time so that I can do the things that require my full attention. My video blog doesn't necessarily require my full attention, but if I want to focus and get all the recording done at one time, then I need to do it while they're asleep. So, also, same with the turning of the compost. It just rained, so it's all super heavy and saturated with water. So it was probably not the most ideal situation to do it, but it was the time that I had and it needed to get done. So I just took this time to do it anyway, while both the boys were asleep. This time of year, it's a lot easier to turn the compost because when it was warmer, there were bees and ants all over it. And the last two times, I think the time before this one, there were still ants all over it, but they were avoidable. But this time I didn't notice any bugs other than worms, which was a really good sign, I think. I had two really large earthworms that I saw within the first few minutes of turning that compost. And so I found most of that composting material off of Facebook Marketplace. There was a woman and her husband, they have horses, they were selling it, but I got a whole pickup truck load of compost from them, and they had been breaking it down, turning it up a little bit for a little while, and so it was already like partially ready. And I got a huge amount from them for 20 bucks. And they said I can come back whenever to get more. And then I know another woman who's got a lot more livestock, like sheep, cow, some goats, and a couple donkeys. She said that whenever they start having babies, that she will let me come and take as much of that manure as I want. So I have a lot of resources to build up a huge amount of compost to keep making more and more for my garden. And that's super exciting because of growing medium. It's the most expensive part about gardening. Here, listen to any gardeners for any amount of time, they'll tell you that growing medium is the most expensive part of gardening because the seeds, maybe $5 a packet? But most of the time they're cheaper than that. Like the seeds are not the expensive part. So I'm really excited that I've been able to start accumulating more compost. So in addition to the pine needles, in my compost, it's horse manure and kitchen scraps, like cuttings from vegetables, carrot peels, any sort of rind, maybe with the exception of I don't put avocado pits in my compost anymore, and I don't put citrus things in my compost anymore, just because I heard somewhere that you shouldn't put citrus in your compost pile, so I haven't researched yet, but by the time this video will be over, I will have, and I will share with you what I find. But I've not been putting the citrus in there. A lot of things that I think people say not to put in your compost as far as kitchen scraps go, I think it is because it takes longer for certain things to break down than others. So if you want your compost to be ready as quickly as possible, then you want to put things in there that will break down at the same rate. So really popular things to put in your compost that I know off the top of my head from the kitchen scraps, it's coffee grounds, banana peels, and eggshells. So the eggshells give you calcium, the banana peels, I think it's potassium, and the coffee grounds is nitrogen. I'll correct myself at the end of this video if that's not right, but I'm doing what's off the top of my head as I wait for my water to boil. You can either put all that stuff in a blender and then put it in your compost, and it kind of gives it a little bit of a jump start, I think, but I never do that. I've got a 5-gallon bucket under my sink in the kitchen where I collect all of my composting material, and that makes it a lot easier for me where I don't have to take it out to the pile every single day. I had a large bowl on my countertop, it had a lid, and I would fill that up every single day for my compost. And if I didn't empty it that day, then it would smell really bad. Even though it had a lid on it, it still would stink. I find using the 5-gallon bucket, I just bought one from Lowe's. I got the lid with it too, so it's like $7 for the lid in the bucket, and has a handle, so it makes it really easy to take over, and it takes like a couple days, if not like a week or so, to fill that thing up. So I have a lot less carrying of the compost bucket over and over. And I just realized I turned the wrong burner on. You can also put tea bags in your compost, though I don't really do that often. We put a fish carcass in our compost. I have put grass clippings from after Ben cuts the grass, and I have also put the dirty bedding and chicken manure from my chicken coop. Most of the things, I think, if not all of them, that I put in my compost pile require a hot compost. And as far as I understand it, that means that it generates heat when it breaks down. I learned from the MI Gardener that in order to achieve the correct environment for that to happen, you need to have 9 cubic feet of matter to break down. So we have those pallets, they're about what, like 3 feet, maybe 4 feet. Each stall for my compost pile is about 9 cubic feet, has a volume of 9 cubic feet. So I have that about filled up. They're a little taller than 3 feet, so it'd be more than 9 cubic feet, but I think I have it at that point to where it should be doing that. And I haven't really noticed steam generating off of it. Maybe it's not cold enough to really see that yet, but when it breaks down and you like scoop it of the center or something, you should see like steam coming out of it, and that's how you know that it's working. When I picked up that horse manure, it was doing that. Specifically from my kitchen scraps, I save eggshells, coffee grounds, banana peels, apple cores. I was saving citrus peels for a little while, so I'll add how long those are supposed to take to break down. And I don't typically save bones from animals, though I'm pretty sure you could, as long as you allowed enough time for them to break down. I don't think you want to compost cooked bones, but if people like bury fish under their plants when like for a fertilizer, then I think animal carcasses are okay to use in your compost. And I think the only thing is if they aren't broken down enough, that's what they cause problems. Those sort of things really need to be broken down enough. Keep in mind is if your compost isn't broken down all the way and you put it in your garden, you potentially are inviting rodents like squirrels and other various wildlife to come into your garden and eat everything. So it's another reason why you want to make sure everything is broken down plenty. Now, as I'm recording this in this very moment, I do not know how long all of these things break down, but we're going to learn together. We're going to figure this out, and you can decide from there what sort of things you want to put in your compost and what sort of things you want to make sure you don't put in your compost. So I just did a lot of research, and it's actually really interesting. There is a lot to know about composting, and I don't think my brain can contain all of it. But what I figured out, I think will be useful for you and useful for me. So relaying this information out to you will help me remember. I have heard a few people say to not put things like fish or citrus peels in your compost. So I looked those things up specifically. Important thing to remember about composting is you just want it to be balanced. You want your pile to be a balanced level of brown matter and green matter, also known as carbon and nitrogen. Now, the brown matter or carbon is wood shavings, twigs, leaves, and manure. The green matter is grass clippings and vegetable scraps from your kitchen. And as long as it is equal, it is okay to compost so many things. With fish, like people use fish fertilizers, fish emulsion in their garden, it's okay to put it in your compost. You just need to make sure you give it enough time to break down and you have a balanced level of nitrogen and carbon. So fish is high in nitrogen. You want to add a lot of like sticks, wood shavings, or leaves. You want a good circulation of airflow in your compost pile for the microorganisms to survive and actually work at breaking down your composting material. Now, the balance of the compost pile rings true with composting citrus peels. Now, citrus peels, I wasn't able to find an exact amount of time that it takes to break down, but I was able to find how long it takes for fish to break down. It is about 4 to 6 months. Other things like grass clippings, it takes 2 to 4 months. So I think that rings true for other vegetable scraps that are like apple cores, banana peels, those sort of things. They take 2 to 4 months to break down. But another thing I've been adding into my compost pile is eggshells. I am not going to put that in my compost anymore. I will still save them and use them in my garden because they're really good if you grind them up into a powder. They're good to use like around the base of your plants for like a slug deterrent, I think, or some sort of insect deterrent. And no, one of my sister-in-laws does that. She told me about that. So it's still really good to save your eggshells for your garden. So don't just throw them away. And they will break down. It just takes a couple of years. So if you're going to put them in a compost pile, you just want to make sure that it's a compost pile that you're going to leave for a really long time. Maybe you can have one for things that are going to take up a lot of time to break down, and then another one that will be ready in 4 to 6 months. That seems to be the longest amount of time for regularly composted ingredients to take to actually break down. Most of the things that I put in my compost actually are carbon rich, and I thought before I did all this research that my compost pile was very well balanced. But I noticed as I was turning it today that it wasn't steaming. And I was like, maybe that's just because it's warm outside and I can't see the steam. But now I'm thinking maybe it's because it's mostly carbon material. The amount of vegetable scraps I have in my compost pile makes up less than like a fourth of the compost pile. It's mostly manure and mostly leaves, branches, and pine needles. So what I'm gonna do to balance that out is I'm gonna get a lot of nitrogen-rich ingredients for my compost pile. Now the grass isn't growing right now because of it's almost winter and it's not growing. There's nothing to cut to put in the compost pile. But there's other things that I can use. I can use my kitchen scraps, which I don't accumulate a whole lot of in order to balance the compost pile, but I can go to restaurants in town to collect their used coffee grounds or their vegetable scraps and put that in my compost pile. So that's what I'm gonna do. I already know that you can go to Starbucks and you can get coffee grounds from them and put that in your compost pile. They save them in little foil bags for you and everything. So that'll be a really easy way to balance out the level in my compost pile, and that's the plan. Now, you can research further and find out the average amount of time it takes for the things that you are composting to break down, and that can help you decide what you want to put in your compost pile or not. So for me, I'm not going to put eggshells in my compost anymore, but I am basically going to put everything else in there that I have been putting in. I'm just going to try to make it more nitrogen and carbon balanced. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed learning with me today. If you're interested in learning how to garden with me, click the subscribe button and you can follow along with my gardening journey and we'll have lots of fun, hopefully some laughs. Thanks again for watching. Happy gardening, guys. Bye.